Hello, let's take a look at IDEA StatiCa version 24.0. Today's agenda is to take a look at the highlights, what's new in steel, concrete and the BIM links. Here are all the highlights, all the new improved functions and features in the new version. Let's take a look at what is most interesting for you regarding the Eurocode improvements and mostly the Nordic region improvements in this version. So what's new in steel? First of all, the simple connections. So there's something called parametric templates now. So you can create and share through the connection library some templates. There's also a new conversion tab that converts codes and materials if you use this simple connections features. There is also some enhanced sketches included in connection library templates and also some automatic weld sizing. So let's have a closer look at it. So yeah, this is the basics. You can improve the number of modifications and the time you spend on a connection by setting up these templates. In the developer tab, you have the possibility to gather some parameters. So this first demo shows a normal procedure of modeling a connection. See that you have to do a lot of modifications. It takes some time. You have to calculate and do the standard procedure, so to say. And in this new templates, you can then gather the most interesting parameters. In this case, it's 4 parameters, and then just adjust the ones that are interesting. So again, the admins or call it the senior engineers, they can then prepare these parametric templates, and then the users, they just input only few values to get the connection required. So you can save time, and there's also this new conversion tab that I talked about. So if you propose a connection, the template will show up. It has a P because it's the parametric type, and you can then convert from Eurocode to US code, for example, and then continue with your parametric design. So here you just input the plate thickness, the number of bolts, offset of plate, depth of stiffeners, and then possibly the auto-designed method for welds, and then you're good to go. So in this way you can save some time. Within this parametric design feature, there are also enhanced sketches. So you can add it to your connection library templates, and there are some better sketches tools in the software. I will show you a demo. So this connection is also created in the parametric design template. So we run the check, and then you can choose between a couple of different section drawings, so to say. And you will get them included in a report with measurements and also automatic weld sizing. There is better optimization now with machine learning, so you can choose between the capacity estimation. You can input some utilization level, for example 60% or 90%, and the program will then size the welds according to that. You can also choose between 3 other methods which uses an algorithm. It's this minimum ductility, or full strength, or with over strength. So let's have a look at it. Here we can see we have just some welds inputted, and we can choose between the different types. The minimum ductility, for example. And then the welds will change size according to what rule you set. And in the settings, you can then choose the target utilization for the auto design. And you can then choose to capacity estimation, go to weld sizing, and then look at the results. And and one other great improvement is steel pins. You can now include steel pins in your bracings or diagonals or stuff like that. It's in Eurocode only, and it's only for when you have normal force and shear force. So it's a 1D, it's modeled as a 1D element under shear and bending. So we can have a look at it. For example, in this case, before it was only possible to model bolts, but now you can then choose the pin. It's under the operation fastener, grid, or contact, and you then, here we go, and you just have to switch from bolts to pin. So this is a great improvement. Here you see the results, the moment and the shear force, and the checks according to Eurocode when using pins. So in the materials tab, you will find the pin, and basically you can choose the material. So that is a great new improvement. There are also other improvements. So now there is no model differences between the member connection application. So if you model some connections in the member application, it's the same as in the connection application. You can also extend the member with the cut operation. You also have now included high strength steel, and in the code setup you can then change the strain limit if you want to do that. Also, cut-off plane in parallel planes will make it much easier to model connections, and there are some new icons in the member application. So here is a summary of what's new in the steel module. So parametric templates reduce the clicks by up to 80%. And within that, there are possibilities to make better sketches. And in the connection library database, there are more filters and more connections. You also have a one-click weld sizing to full capacity of all welds, if you choose to do that. And also pins and welds optimization using machine learning. There's also a possibility to do auto design of bolts almost in the same matter as the welds for shear connections. Let's look at what's new in concrete. This is a feature we have been waiting for a while. This will be a really good tool. So it's basically a 3D detail in beta. Still in beta. There are some verifications waiting to be finished. Yeah, you can then do steel to concrete, for example, a base plate with a steel column, and you can completely check the concrete. You couldn't do that completely in the connection application before, but now you can do it in the detail application. So let's have a look at it. Well, basically it's volume elements of concrete and then 1D reinforcement. It's limited to Eurocode and only ULS checks. I will give you a demonstration. So here, for example, we have a block. You can choose between rectangular or polygon. You can then input some supports. You can have then polyline and input some supports and copy them. And if you want to model, for example, a base plate with some anchors, and then apply some load, we can do point load, surface load, or group of forces. We can do that. So, for example, here we have some forces from a column. They are now inputted, and we can now continue to reinforce this concrete block. So we put in the group of bars in all directions, and we can now hit calculate. And we will get a complete check of the concrete for this foundation of the column. This was not completely possible before. You had to do some estimations and stuff, but now you can see here also the deformation, the stresses, the strains, both in the concrete and reinforcement, and then the report, of course. You can also do walls in this 3D detail. So, for example, eccentric walls and loads. The material properties are autotropic. You can import DXF elements in 2D and 3D, and there are some unique mesh formulations for computational speed to make this application fast. Also, Eurocode based and ULS checks can be made, and this is a really great feature for those of you who design a lot of footings. Now you can actually export this footing or the base plate with the forces from the welds to the detail application. We can have a look at it. Let's do a footing. So this is in the connection application. We start here and we use one of the templates. So it's a column with a base plate and some forces. We run the analysis to get the loads, so to say. You get the forces in the welds, and we can now press this detail export button. We save our project, and then we open it in detail. And now we see that we have the concrete block, we have the base plate, the anchor bolts, and then of course the transfer devices, and then the loads. And here we can see all of the loads in X, Y, Z direction. So basically the welds on the base plate. And now we can continue to input the reinforcement, so the group of bars. And complete it and run the code check. So now you have the possibility to completely check the concrete with reinforcement, which was not possible in the connection application in the past. Let's jump to what's new in BIM. There's now a free version of Checkbot. So it's basically replacing the free CAD plugin, so you can use it without a paid license. It's compatible with all of the existing BIM links to IDEA, both CAD and FEA programs. We can have a look at how it works. So yeah, this is a basic user. It's not under any commercial license. You can create the user anytime you want on the IDEA StatiCa webpage. So no other modules are available, but you can go in and install the BIM links, for example, for SAP 2000 or Tekla or Robot. And then if you have a project, this is a SAP 2000 FEA global model, we can then install the BIM link and run it. And we can now open a Checkbot project. So you see it's free, and all of the other options are grayed out, so you cannot open any projects in the connection application. But you can then import some part of the structure from SAP 2000, like this. And then you can pass it on to your colleagues or some other person that need this part of the structure. There is also improvements in the checkbot, the speed of the checkbot. So you can see now up to 90% faster import of models from, for example, a robot, if you do a single connection. So if you open a checkbot project, and especially when you have a lot of number of nodes, there are up to 93% improvement in speed. So that's always a good thing. There are also some new keyboard shortcuts for those of you who need this. Control S is for save project, Control Z is to undo, Y is to redo, and so on. So F2 to rename and so on. Also improvement to save some time. Okay, thank you. That was my favorite highlights of IDEA StatiCa version 24.0.